Get your filthy hands off him. Woman, you don't belong here. The white security guard's voice thundered through the cold, marble halls of the private estate as he shoved the black nurse backward, his grip leaving red marks on her wrist. She stumbled, barely catching herself, as the unconscious man on the stretcher, her patient, groaned faintly. The guard's spit hit the floor near her shoes, a deliberate act of disgust. The nurse, Amara Lewis, stood frozen, her pulse hammering in her ears. She had worked 36 hours straight, rushing through traffic when the emergency call came. A man, an unknown patient, was reported critical. But when she arrived, she was met not with gratitude, but suspicion. The mansion loomed over her, wrapped in the gloom of night, its manicured gardens and towering columns standing like a monument to arrogance. She had no idea who lay dying inside, only that his life depended on her. Her breath fogged in the winter air as she steadied herself, forcing professionalism into her trembling voice. "Sir, please. He needs immediate oxygen support. If we don't stabilize his breathing now, he won't make it through the hour." The guard sneered, looking her up and down. "You think I'm going to let you touch Mr. Waltham with those hands? Do you even know who he is?" She didn't, but the name made the other servants pale. Somewhere deep in the house, the ticking of an antique clock echoed through the silence. The butler, an elderly man with a silver waistcoat, stepped forward nervously. "The doctor is running late. She's the only medical professional available right now, sir." But the guard wasn't listening. His smirk deepened as he crossed his arms. "You people always think you're saving the world. You're here for a paycheck. Don't pretend otherwise. Step away." For a moment, Amara considered leaving. She'd seen faces like his before, faces twisted by inherited hatred and fear. But then she looked down at the man gasping for air, his skin pale, lips turning blue. She couldn't walk away from a dying human being, no matter how rich or cruel his world might be. She pressed past the guard, her body shaking not from fear, but resolve. "Then fire me, arrest me, whatever you want," she snapped. "But you're not going to bury him while he's still breathing." She knelt beside the billionaire, Elliot Waltham, though she didn't know it yet, and started CPR. His pulse was fading. She opened his airway, cleared his throat, and began compressions, counting under her breath. Sweat gathered at her temples despite the cold. The guard stood back, muttering, "You'll pay for this, girl." As minutes stretched into eternity, Amara's mind drifted. She thought of her mother, who had been denied treatment years ago in a hospital that ran out of beds. She remembered the night she decided she would never let another person die because of someone else's arrogance. Finally, the billionaire coughed weakly. His chest rose, then fell again, but air was flowing. Amara adjusted the oxygen mask, whispering, "Come on, stay with me." When the ambulance arrived, she was drenched in sweat and tears. The paramedics loaded him up, but she refused to leave. Something in her gut warned her that this wasn't over. In the hospital, the staff whispered, Elliot Waltham, the steel magnate, the billionaire who owned half the state's infrastructure, had been poisoned. There were traces of a rare sedative in his blood, administered slowly over days. Whoever did it had planned to make it look like a heart failure. And in the chaos of medical reports and police interviews, one thing became clear. Amara had interrupted someone's perfect plan to kill him. But that night, as she waited outside his ICU room, the whispers grew darker. A woman in a white coat approached her, Dr. Sloan, the hospital director, sharp as glass and twice as cold. "Miss Lewis," she said curtly, "your presence here is no longer necessary. The patient's family has requested that only authorized staff remain." Amara frowned. "His family? I thought he lived alone." Sloane's lips twitched. "He does. but his business partners are handling arrangements. We'll take it from here. There was something off. The way the woman avoided her eyes, the way the security cameras in the hallway seemed to swivel away when Amara moved. She felt it deep in her bones. They were trying to silence her. Days passed. Waltham's condition worsened mysteriously. Machines failed without reason. Medication went missing. And Amara, though officially dismissed, kept returning at night, sneaking into the ward under the guise of delivering supplies. She couldn't explain it. Some instinct told her that if she left, he'd die before sunrise. One night, as rain lashed the hospital windows, she found two men outside Waltham's room, whispering. One was the same security guard from the mansion. The other, a pale, nervous-looking man in a suit, was holding a document. The will's ready. Once he's declared brain dead, we transfer the shares, the suited man murmured. Amara's heart pounded. Brain dead. Transfer shares. They were waiting for him to die. No, they were ensuring it. She stepped back too late. The guard turned, eyes narrowing. You again? He lunged forward, grabbing her arm. Can't stay away, can you? Let me go, she hissed, struggling. But he dragged her down the hall, shoving her against the wall. You should have stayed in your place, he growled. People like you always meddle in things above your pay grade. Tears burned her eyes, not from pain, but from the cruel familiarity of it. You're poisoning him, aren't you? She whispered. You're killing him for money. His smirk faltered. For a split second, she saw fear. Then, he slapped her hard enough to split her lip, but before he could say another word, a weak voice croaked from the doorway. What was happening? Elliot Waltham was awake. The guard froze. Amara turned. The billionaire's eyes were half open, disoriented, but alive. Sir, she breathed, you're safe now. He stared between them, confusion giving way to dawning horror. Sloan, she said you'd gone, he murmured. She said the nurse tried to harm me. No, Amara said fiercely. They're the ones trying to finish you off. Waltham blinked slowly, memories flooding back. The glass of wine that tasted strange, the blurred faces leaning over him as his vision faded. The betrayal. The guard bolted. But Amara shouted for help, and within minutes, police swarmed the hall. The conspirators were taken into custody, and for the first time, silence fell over the ward like a held breath. Days later, when Waltham finally regained full strength, he asked to see her. Amara entered his private suite, nervous, wearing the same modest uniform she always did. He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You saved my life, he said quietly, even when my own people wanted you gone. She nodded, unsure how to respond. He leaned forward. Do you know why they thought you'd fail? She frowned. Because I'm black. Because I'm a nurse, not a doctor. Because people like them think we belong on the bottom rung. He smiled faintly, not with humor, but with something like regret. Exactly. He paused, his tone shifting. But what they didn't know is that I built this company with people who had nothing. My mother was a nurse, too. She died because a hospital turned her away. You didn't just save my life. You reminded me of the woman who gave it to me. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. I was just doing my job, sir. Waltham stood, walking slowly to the window overlooking the city skyline. No, he said, you were doing what humanity demands. That's more than any of them ever did. The clock was ticking, and the situation was spinning out of control. Will the protagonist's courage be enough to overcome this systemic injustice? But before we see the shock of the reveal, take a second to tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Your support helps us share stories of true courage. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into the full story. Weeks later, headlines erupted Asterisk, billionaire awakens from coma. Nurse exposes murder plot inside private hospital. Asterisk, at a press conference. Cameras flashed as Waltham stepped onto the stage, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "The world needs to know," he said, glancing toward Amara in the front row, "that racism nearly cost me my life. It blinded men to truth. It almost buried justice." He gestured for her to join him. She hesitated, then walked up beside him as the room fell silent. "Meet Amara Lewis," he said, "the woman who saved me when no one else would. Starting today, she's not just my nurse. She's the new chief medical officer of the Waltham Foundation for Equality." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The same security guard who once shoved her stood in handcuffs nearby, his face gray with disbelief. His thoughts raced. How could this be happening? How could a woman he called filthy now stand higher than he ever would? He wanted to shout, to defend himself, but words stuck in his throat. The humiliation crawled through his veins like fire. His arrogance, once armor, now strangled him. He remembered the look in her eyes that night. Calm, unwavering. The look of someone who had already seen the worst of humanity and chosen to rise above it. In that moment, his power vanished. For Amara, the victory wasn't about titles or applause. It was about silence, the kind of silence where justice finally breathes. As reporters shouted questions, she looked at the man beside her, then at the guard being led away. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but you'll remember this every time you look at another person like me." The guard's eyes filled with tears. He turned away. Outside, the sky broke open with morning light. Amara closed her eyes, feeling warmth on her face. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, fully, completely. The city moved on, but her name lingered in headlines, in conversations, in the hearts of people who had once been told they didn't belong. She became a symbol, not of revenge, but of rebirth. And somewhere deep in that marble mansion where it all began, the echo of her courage still lived. Proof that even in a world divided by color and class, one act of integrity could rewrite destiny itself.